What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the season 6 finale of At Home with Mark. This is episode 22, and we have Mr. Marc Ford on the show. Dude, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Been a big fan for a long time, man. Long time.
All right. Thank you.
So it'll be cool to talk about all the stuff that I have on my mind with like all this guitar nerdy stuff that we were discussing beforehand. But so you just got back off the road a little bit. Do you have like a little respite right now before going back out?
Yeah, I got home last night.
That's crazy.
We were only out 10 days or so, but I'm just kind of starting to get back into playing some
good.
Some dates and get ready to actually work again.
Yeah, man. Who's in the band? Like, who's in the touring band?
Right now, just it's just a 3-piece. For this last trip, Barry Oakley played bass. But being based out of the West Coast, Phil Jones is drumming. So being based out of the West Coast, we're going to do more work here. So there's a bass player, Jim Wilson, that plays with Phil a lot, that has been doing most of the gigs.
Okay.
But this last trip, Barry came out and filled in for us.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah. Successful 10 days?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, for sure.
Does it feel good?
They all have their ups and downs.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. Yeah. Does it feel good to be back out there doing it, man?
Yeah. Yes and no. You know what I mean? It's like touring is its own beast, and you have a love-hate relationship with it because it can be a lot of highs and it can be a lot of lows. So it can be a grind too.
Yeah. Because how early on, like how old were you when you first kind of stepped into that kind of touring lifestyle?
Well, I was playing clubs. I started at 15, but I didn't really tour hard until about 90 when the Burning Tree record came out.
Okay.
And then it was pretty much that was probably a good year. And then there was a little bit of a lapse. And then, once the Crows started up, it was kind of full on.
Right. Totally. And that was like hitting the ground running. Because that seemed like, from what I understand, that was a pretty quick, I know you were doing some fill-in stuff, but it was like you kind of jumped in right away when they were ready to kind of pull you in, right? And there was a decent amount of material to learn too, right?
Yeah. They only had the one record. So
right. Oh yeah, that's true. I forgot. Yeah.
Just had the first record, but that was their biggest success. So they were cresting when I joined. They had already done a lot of 18 months touring on that first record.
Mm-hmm.
So I came in and we recorded the second record and went right into just a heavy touring schedule, and it was full on right away.
Yeah, I remember that period of time too, man. I was in high school when all that stuff was happening. And like the Horde tour was part of my DNA every summer and everything. So it's like going to see those shows and like kind of crossing paths with all these great bands. I feel like that's like the first time I kind of was hip to. I have an older brother who's really into jam bands, like super big Deadhead and stuff. Yeah. So all that stuff was kind of filtered to me.
Right.
So I think he must have had Shake Your Moneymaker, or my older sister did. But when I heard, Southern Harmony, I was like, holy shit, dude. Like, cause that stuff hit me so hard, coming from the blues realm, but like in that scene at the time, it seemed like there was a lot of camaraderie between bands, like, that, especially that whole Horde situation. Did you kind of feel that vibe? Was it pretty energetic at that time?
Well, it was exciting for sure. I don't know how much camaraderie there was between everybody. It may have seemed that way, but
yeah.
there are people who don't get along, but there were attitudes that prevailed that, was always like, well, we're better than you. And, there was a lot of competition. There's like, as it should be, it keeps things healthy and keeps things on its edge, on its, like everyone, at least from the Crow standpoint, we considered ourselves right or wrong better than everybody else, and fuck you. And like it was a fight every day.
Yeah.
But I mean, of course, Wilco was on that, and we got to be friendly with them, and there were there were some that we didn't get so friendly with, but
Right.
yeah,
I
I
just
mean, generally, a lot of relationships got built in those things that have kind of lasted, yeah, forever.
right. Yeah, I'm still there. I'm sure there's still people that you keep in touch with from those days that you kind of there's the business world around music too. It's like filters in and
But
out,
not so much I keep in touch with them, but when I do run into them, we have history, so
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah,
that
man.
big of a world.
I know. It
Everybody
seems
knows each other, and so
yeah, it does seem pretty
stayed there
small.
long
Well, speaking of history, let me ask you this because I always ask everybody this. I'm so curious about this stuff. Because everybody has a different story, but like what's like your earliest musical memory? Like what's the earliest thing you can remember where music hit you?
Well, I stayed a lot at my grandparents' house when I was really young. In fact, I lived there in the first part, and they had a player piano there that would, you'd put the old scrolls in the thing and then pump the pedals, and the whole thing would just go. And like that to me that was pretty hip. That was fascinating. And I think maybe there, I mean, uh,
Was there other music in the house too? Like,
not well, I mean, there was music in the car, and there was not a lot of music going on all the time, but it definitely it spoke to me more than anything else. Maybe I drew a little bit, but when I finally and then elementary school, they have the sort of classes, band class, and I tried trumpet for a second, and I really enjoyed the classes, but trumpet wasn't really singing to me, or singing back at me, uh, until I found a guitar, and then I was just like, okay, here's a language I can speak, and it was on. It was, it was obsession. I had someone to hide with. Yeah.
yeah. So what were the early like guitar records that you would have been probably listening to and kind of like shedding on when you first started?
Well, in the very beginning, Frampton Comes Alive was the big sort of everybody seemed to have that. And then I got turned on to guys like Richie Blackmore and those first two Jeff Beck records were huge, and Hendrix. And that was the thing. Once I heard Hendrix, it kind of just squashed all the Framptons and all the, it just leveled the field. Like it changed everything really. The possibilities of what could be done, and so, and then. But I was listening to songwriters first. Like I was listening to Elton John before I was listening to any real guitar music, and so it didn't start with guitar music for me. It was just about songs and music generally, until, of course, I got the guitar, and then it got more specific, and spent a lot of time learning the instrument. So you track it down, and there was always guitar heroes, what I mean? So there was, Ted Nugent was a huge thing at the time, and
Oh, really? Okay, cool. Right on.
yeah, I mean, politics aside, like, he was playing rock and roll music,
Yep.
and in a rock and roll way, and along the sort of Chuck Berry lines of things. And it was just popular at the time. I was young, and that's what the kids in the neighborhood had. And back then you'd ride your bike all day to go check out this record somebody just got, or like you found out that somebody at school's older brother had a fuzz pedal, and you went, what? And it was just you took what you could get in these tiny little chunks, and there was no internet. There was no like source of information. You had to just scour and really hunt for things. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And speaking of fuzz, so Marcus Reeves from Reeves Electro is asking, on the Vulture album, what's the almost cocked wah fuzz you use occasionally? Don't remember?
There isn't one.
There isn't one. Is that the amp?
No, I don't even think I had a wah pedal at the studio. I mean, I remember using a power booster for that one. I think Buffalo Effects power booster was kind of like the over-the-top fuzzy thing that I had. There was one fuzz pedal that I used that had kind of an octave divider bit on. I used for one bit, but mostly, yeah, that just was the sound that I was getting at the time, I think.
Man. Dude, so that's the other thing. I mean, this is jumping down the list of my questions, but like if we're on the topic of fuzz, like I'm a fuzz junkie. I love fuzz pedals and
Yeah.
all types. Like, are you into specific fuzz circuits? Like, is a fuzz face more your thing? Is a tone bender? Is a zonk? Like, what's more of your flavor?
I really, really like the tone bender circuit. I didn't get hip to it till way later, because again, all we had available to us, I had a Dunlop fuzz face,
Right.
so that, and I was in the Hendrix, so I learned how to manipulate that thing with the volume on my guitar and just how fat to get it towards at the end of the, between 8 and 10, and like it just all the tone shaping you can do just with the volume knob. So I would say I'm more familiar and have more time spent with the fuzz face circuit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what I was using on all those early Crows records. If I was using fuzz, I was using a fuzz face kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably mostly what I've ever used. But the tone bender thing is really hit, but it's a whole other kind of beast. You have to play the guitar a little different with that thing.
Oh yeah. Do you ever stack overdrive with fuzzes to kind of get that Doyle Bramhall, like that smooth out thing that he does? Or?
Yeah, I didn't back then. I mean, I mostly for the longest time I had a wah, I had a fuzz face, and I had a tube screamer, and that was it. And one combination of one or all of them,
Right.
and then there's a lot of volume play on the guitar, and then I learned with the tone bender things, the tone knob really is a massive thing for your tone, because a big sound like Jeff Beck used, and all the tone off with those tone benders.
That's
and
crazy.
you get, there's so much brightness to those things that backing the tone way down is a massive thing. But with fuzz faces, it's not as subtle, the differences you get.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
so woolly and thick already.
right. And are you mostly kind of on humbuckers, you feel like?
I started out with Fenders with single coils.
Mm-hmm.
Again, Hendrix, it was kind of like my main go-to. And then I didn't get a Les Paul till I joined the Black Crowes, and Chris gave me a Les Paul humbucker. It was my first going humbuckers. Nowadays, I just use it on that Asher more often because, I'm trying to travel light. So a humbucker just will work in more scenarios than having a single coil screaming or humming or wherever you don't know where you're going to find yourself. And it just it seems to cover more ground when I'm just having to bring one guitar around.
Yeah, I can see how that like works well for you too in a power trio setting as well.
Yeah, well, that Asher that I have is a lot less like a Les Paul. It's more like a beefed up Telecaster. It cuts really well because it's the scale length, the Firebird scale length, and the neck through the body, and then the body's just a sort of a thin piece of wood. It's not laminated or anything, so it doesn't have the bulk of a Les Paul.
Mm-hmm.
But the humbuckers help it to get a little more
Yeah.
splatter. Yes.
It almost seems like that thing. It looks like a Blackguard Telly in a way. It has that vibe about it, you know.
Yeah.
That guitar. Every time I see pictures of you with it, I'm like, it feels like an old like Blackguard Telly in a way.
Yeah.
Um,
It's much snappier than a Gibson.
yeah, that's cool, man. Um, and then so Jake was asking, came across a picture of you with the Joe Strummer Telly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, what's up with that guitar? I don't know that I've seen that picture.
Well, it's been a while. In fact, I gave it to somebody. But I just, when they went on sale, I had a friend at a Guitar Center, and I picked it up. I'm like, wow, this thing isn't. It's kind of cool. It felt a little bit like my Telly, and I think I just wanted to get a backup, and so I got one. They were, I could get them pretty cheap, considerably, and then I just replaced the pickups in them with probably Tom Short pickups or something.
Right. Do you tinker with your instruments a lot too? Like, are you like, I don't have like nothing feels precious. Like you're okay with, swapping pickups in and out and things like
Oh
that. Like,
yeah, I want it to work.
right.
Yeah,
Totally.
if it's not the right one, it's not the right one. I don't care. I'm not a collector.
Yeah. Does it feel like, especially if you're going out on the road too, is that stuff that you kind of, I got to dial this in so I'm feeling happy every night kind of thing? Or does it happen through the tour? You're like, oh, this isn't working. I'm going to swap mid tour.
Well, yeah, once you're touring and you're kind of in it, I mean,
Right.
you don't have it with you, then it's chances of getting it can be slim depending on how long you're out there. Nowadays I just try to bring something that'll cover the most ground. I've got a very tiny pedal board that I carry, and it's got a fuzz on it and a couple different overdrives and a delay and a tuner, and I bring that Asher, and I can pivot really well with that stuff and get what needs to be done. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And lately I've been using Backline stuff. So I brought my brown box with me, and that helped a lot, so that, it just takes the spike and the point away from the amp. You
Yeah.
starve at the voltage, and it starts to mush a little bit and work with you better rather than be so aggro and pointed at you.
Yeah. So were you dealing with a lot of Fender DeVilles on this tour?
Um, I did have to play through one.
Yeah.
And actually it was and that was actually there in Baltimore.
Oh, was it? That's
Yeah.
funny.
And I was actually surprised, because I never really enjoyed those amps. I could never really get a decent sound out of it. And this one was all right. I was, I mean,
Yeah.
you can make anything work. It's just a matter of so much of this. We spent so many hours doing it that you feel the characteristics of amps more than you can hear them sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be a stumbling block, or it can be a new challenge. The feel of an amp can, the way it talks back to you can really alter your comfort level while you're doing it, and either allow you to go further or kind of be a kind of pain in the ass. It's kind of, you can get tripped up on it pretty easy.
Oh yeah, man.
But I
So
mean, the key to playing music is listening, first of all. So that includes your gear and how it's responding to you, and not be so into your habit that my gear has to perform a certain way for me.
mm-hmm.
There's always small adjustments that you have to make to accommodate the gear and the people that you're playing with.
Yeah, man.
So listening first is the key thing. So it can be a challenge, or it can freak you out.
Yeah, and I mean, you're seasoned enough pro that, like you're saying, you can deal with whatever's thrown at you and make it work in any way that you can. But yeah, because those amps can be so loud and just like too clean in a way sometimes.
Yeah. Well, like,
But
again, the brown box helps a little bit.
yeah,
I back down the voltage to it, and so the spike sort of goes away,
yeah,
and it sags a little bit more, and it's a little more musical to me.
Yeah, that's a brilliant piece of gear, man.
Yeah, really
What
good.
so what was the best backline amp that you ran into? You were like, hell yeah. What situations have you rolled in where you're like super pleasantly surprised?
Well, just on this last trip, I mean, I played everything from there was a Marshall half stack 900 series in the last gig, and the gig prior to that was a 65 Princeton.
Dang. Where was
So
that?
that was in Wayne, Pennsylvania. They
Oh
had
wow.
it was a great amp, and it had a different speaker and it had a different Weber in it, so it wasn't so small sounding. But the stage was small and it was dry, so it worked perfect. You know,
Man.
and I love a Princeton circuit. It you know it
Are
just
you a fan of the like putting a 12 in there or do you like the 10?
I have one with a 15 in it
Really?
that Headstrong built for me years ago. Yeah,
Oh,
and
Wayne's awesome, dude.
it's
That's
really
awesome.
it's a great amp. You've used it in so many situations.
Man. Okay, so if he built that, I'm gathering obviously the cabinet's bigger. I'm
The
gathering.
cabinet's bigger, and I'm running short bottle 6L6s in it.
Wow, dude.
So it's a little beefier than a Princeton, but you still have that phase inverter, and you know you still have the Princeton thing, but it's
Yeah.
just louder, yeah, bigger.
Man. Yeah, his stuff is great. I haven't played through one of his until I went to NAM and we stopped. My buddy took me to is it like LA Vintage? Is that the name of the store? Maybe. But they had a Headstrong Little King in there, and I was like, oh, I gotta play through this. I've never heard them. And like just like I mean, I'm a huge fan of Two Rock. I have a couple, and those amps feel like home to me now just because of how high def and how big they are. And same thing with Wayne's though. I felt like it's like HD guitar. That's the best way I can describe it. It's like everything is so articulate. It's like you can't hide behind anything. You know what I
Right.
mean? Which
Yeah.
I, I think makes you a better player because you can't hide behind anything. Makes you
Right.
work for it, you know. But those
Yeah.
amps are killer.
It hears everything. I mean, that's just quality components put together correctly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not industry line PC boards, and I mean, there's a lot of the tone starts to flatten out really quick, and the HD quality tends to get low res pretty fast if you're not using the right transformers and
Mm-hmm.
soldering it all together right. Not
Yeah.
saying not saying there's not a lot of great PC boards, but when you get into that, they're cutting corners elsewhere too usually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, Wayne, I had him on here, I think my first season or second season of the show, and his process when he explained it and how he does things, he puts so much love into those amps too. It's like you can just
Yeah.
tell the people that are like really in it for the right reasons in a way.
Well,
All right, well, let me
they're the people can never really get their business off the ground because they won't trust anyone else to do what they're doing. They're
totally.
the only one that can do it, and so they're stuck with what they can manufacture themselves.
Yeah, which is crazy. The amount of work
You
that
know,
guy puts in.
he makes amazing amps, and I've been using a lot of satellite amps too. That guy Adam has a way with the sort of like the Marshall style circuits and just how to make things work right.
Yeah. Have you ever messed with like any of those like Bell and Howell projector amps or those Austin Hook space heater amps or anything? Have you checked
Yeah,
those out?
yeah.
What do you think of those?
They're cool. You
Yeah,
know,
different sound. I mean,
they remind me of like the old amps from the '40s, kind of more, and um, just real lively and quick, and yeah.
yeah, man.
Skip Sim- Skip Simmons, is that the guy up north?
I don't
Uh,
know that name. Yeah.
anyway, I played through his, yeah, but
Those
yeah,
preamps are awesome and those projectors. Like they just sound
right,
killing, man.
right. Well,
Um,
yeah, that one was probably as hi-fi as it got at the time, right?
yeah.
They
You're
were more
not wrong.
hi-fi than they were putting in guitar amps.
Yeah, totally, dude. All right, so let me bounce back. So like if we if we go back in history, so you first you get on the road with the Crows and stuff, then you get in the studio and you're working with them. I'll have to say this, and I
Well, it
mean
was a
this is
studio first. To be honest
studio
with
first
you. Right.
for Southern Harmony before you hit the road.
Yeah.
Okay. And then when you post that, like Amorica, right? So I have to go. Wiser Time is probably one of the most famous songs amongst my friends in terms of like drive-in music. And I can just remember the first time hearing. I mean, I feel like at that time, maybe that's when Slide started to enter my life too. Like when I started hearing those records. And believe it or not, I never really listened to the Allman Brothers deeply. Like I never listened to Dwayne heavily. I think I skipped right into hearing like the Derek Trucks band too early on. And I was like, what is this? I don't understand this. And then kind of going backwards, to all the old blues cats and all the Bottleneck stuff. Where did you find your love of that style of playing? Because I'm always interested, like, what's the first thing you heard that you're like, oh, Bottleneck. Okay.
Well, honestly, meeting with those guys, I got more involved with it and more educated about that music. I mean, being on the West Coast, we didn't hear the Allman Brothers really either. It was
That's so weird, isn't it?
Wasn't a thing. It was West Coast has its own thing to it, and so getting to play with the Southern guys, I knew about some blues guys, and I knew about it, but I didn't really get an education about it until I started playing with them.
Man, so is that when you first started putting some glass on your finger then?
Well, I'd use a beer bottle or a lighter
Right.
once in a while, but yeah, I didn't do it for real until I joined with them, because there was a couple songs on the first record that needed it, but it was a simple line. So I said, yeah, I play slide.
Right.
Because I knew I could do that.
Yeah.
And then it just developed, I mean, that's the upside to being on tour 8 months out of the year, is that your playing gets quickly, to the top of your game. You get going pretty well. So yeah, the slide thing had to happen pretty quick. And I didn't, it took me a bit to get the open tunings too, because
Yeah.
I knew where the notes were in standard tuning, and I had to make it happen now. So I didn't have time to relearn a whole new scale and what was going on. But over the years, after playing with Rich and experimenting with myself, I realized, it's a whole other moves, and it's a different way of playing, and definitely lends itself more to slide.
Yeah. So were you playing in like which open tunes were you using? I know. So does he do G and E, open G, or?
I didn't really use open tunings because Rich did.
Standard. Okay.
I mean, it just made more sense to have a different thing, and there just wasn't a need for 2 open tune guitars. I mean, if I played the lap steel, it would be an open tuning, probably mostly open G.
Yeah.
And then what I would do is, if I did solo records or if I played in other situations, then I would experiment. I was always experimenting with open tunings, but there wasn't a need for me to get into it, except for maybe a couple instances with the Crows, because Rich was almost always in open tuning, and it didn't seem like there was a need for more of the same.
Totally.
It's a real different change in voicings and tone. You can really tell when something's open tuning.
Yeah. And it's a lot to kind of wrap your head harmonically around that stuff too, because like I play an open C, and I had to like map out the whole fretboard again. And like every night while I was watching TV, I was like figuring out all my triads, all the inversions, because I'm like, dude, how am I gonna, like, I need to be able to navigate this neck without a slide on my finger too, so that stuff gets heavy after a while. You're just like, and then when you pick up your standard tuning guitar, like, wait a second, oh yeah, I'm in standard now. Okay.
Well, the cool thing is by learning that stuff, one informs the other.
Totally.
One one will give you a little insight. Oh, okay. Well, if I do that on the other tuning, you find a lick or, uh, but yeah, and so much with open tuning, it's just shapes.
Yeah.
It's in line right there. It's already a chord. So it's just about varying the notes outside of the chord that's already working. And the thing about it, why two guitars in open tuning, there's so much harmonic information with an open guitar chord. It just, everything blooms on itself. And, yeah, it didn't seem ever to call for two guitar players with that much harmonic information.
It's like having two acoustic pianos playing at the same exact time. It's like, yeah, totally.
That's a lot of sound.
Yeah, totally. What is your philosophy though in terms of like improvising with slide? Because what I've found is obviously you can't play it like you play a fretted solo. There's different ways to think about phrasing. There's different ways to think about it, like a vocalist and all that. Like, what is your philosophy if you're gonna be blown over some changes with a slide? Because what I've found is I have to keep telling myself patience, like to not overplay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, how do you approach it when you're gonna
Well,
solo?
to me, it's easier not to overplay with the slide because you get the sustain and you just can't move it around as quickly as you can your fingers. You can't jump frets. It's, you're limited to the amount of moving around you do. So it's much more of a singing approach to me. I find myself having to slow down when I'm not playing a slide. It's like, just let the note sing a minute, the key to me always was you got to get it to be like a singer in a band. I mean, to be able to get your instrument like the human voice, which is the original instrument, is really what humans respond to. We're keyed to hear each other's voice. And so when an instrument can sound like a voice, it really hits in home. So the phrasing, I learned it young. I mean, all of the people that I read about, that's what everyone said. You got to get it to sing like a voice. And so I just started copying vocal lines in blues songs and it's not listening to the guitar. Okay, well, what's the vocal doing? Well, they're only using a couple of notes at a time. And there's unlimited combinations of three notes that you can turn into phrases and speak and hold a note, wait, or leave a note out. It's so conversational. Music is that you have to, all the rules of conversation apply. So, you don't talk too much. Listen first, listen to know so you can have something to say that's relevant, and, leave room for the other speakers, and, use dynamic level so it's not boring, and punctuation, all of that stuff applies. So I would say my approach from slide or standard is essentially the same mindset. It's to listen for what's missing, honestly. Where's there a hole for me to be at? What's not happening? Sometimes you just need to reinforce what's going on. But mostly it's like, well, where's the missing area? Where can I fit in and make something and sometimes it's way in the background. Sometimes it's right up front. But it's a conversation, really, always. So it's like, what's needed in this conversation? Do I have a point of view? And if I do, how can I say it as succinctly as possible without getting wordy and over explaining myself? And it's just communication, really. So I don't think I think of them differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find that playing in like the trio format has given you more freedom to be able to listen more and to explore like musical ideas and develop things like that? Or do you find that you still want to try to keep things succinct and say something on stage with two other people?
It has its drawbacks. it's if the three guys aren't listening to each other and aren't functioning together well, then it can be really flat and really miss out, since because what you're not getting in tones and notes and sounds, you make up for in this interplay. And this actually you get to hear what a couple people are saying to each other, and it's so much more immediate, and one affects the other, and it's so bang, And the more people you got on stage, is you have to sort of fraction what you're playing. So it can be a lot easier to play with a lot of more people. I mean, as a 3-piece, I'm constantly having to cover everything.
Right.
It can be a lot more work. But it's immediate, and some things don't work as a 3-piece. I try songs of mine, and it's just like, nah, that's not.
Yeah.
I got to keep it in a certain line, but to be able to also get everybody paid and come home, I can't bring more than 3 people.
Right.
I mean, it's like, I
Yeah.
don't tour a lot, so I don't, maybe if I stay out there a little longer, I can start getting paid more for doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can guess that. I mean, if you could, would you prefer to bring another guitarist as another harmonic palette, or would you prefer to bring like a keyboard player with like some B3 stuff with some Rhodes and Whirly?
Probably a good keyboard player is more interesting to me. But I've done it both ways. It's really more about the right player, not necessarily even the instrument that he's on. Because it's there has to be there's either connection there or not. You're either speaking the same language or you're not. People who don't listen don't need to be there at all.
Right.
I'd rather have people that play a couple of notes in the right place than can play all the notes and tell me which ones I'm not doing right.
Well, dude, I mean, I feel like, and you've played with so many great players. It's like you've got this like bar that's pretty high, so that makes sense. I mean, when you play with the right musically mature people, it does make a gigantic difference, and how that speaks off the stage, especially in the audience too. I mean, musician or not, like we could tell, if you guys are having a good time and if it's hooking up.
Well, yeah, people aren't stupid. People, yeah. I mean, it's because it's so much more on a level that's unexplainable. It's music is magic, really. I mean, and we instinctually know when the spirit of the music is right or wrong.
Yeah, no, it's palpable, man. It's for sure palpable. Well, let me talk to you a little bit about producing, because you've been doing more of that, and songwriting. So as a songwriter and everything, and like how are you navigating that world right now? Because dude, you have so many things going on throughout your career in terms of whether you're doing sideman stuff, or if you're in a band, or if you are touring in your own band, or there's so many things that you get into. And I feel like, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like in this industry, you kind of have to wear a bunch of hats, in this career. But like, is this something like a newfound love as far as producing, or is this something that you've always been interested in doing, that you love doing?
Well, I really like doing it, I think, because it utilizes so much more of my knowledge and my experience and the places that I've been. And I've been in a lot of musical situations, and I always tried to pick up on as much as I could. And it's just a bigger view. It's not so narrow as a guitar player has to think. I get to back up and sort of see how everything's working together, and help somebody else find their voice and what they're trying to realize someone else's sound in their head. There's a lot of components that is challenging and is really interesting to me, where being a guitar player can be super limiting. I mean, it's like, I like it all. I like to be a sideman for people. I like to find my place to get in and be part of the whole conversation. And I like to help other people figure it out for themselves and I mean, it's just, it's probably a character fault, but like I can get bored pretty quickly if I'm doing the same thing over and over again. And if I'm not engaged, then everyone loses.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a healthy attitude, especially when you're being hired to kind of walk in and help and support a song, you know?
Right. Well, it's the same
Um,
challenge. It's just, where's your portion?
right.
Everyone has to listen and respond to what the whole is doing. It's just, you know, what's your position right now? As a guitar player, I have a much smaller role than as the singer or the songwriter um, or producer, but not necessarily any less important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how did you meet? So in terms of like, how did you meet Ben Harper? Like, how did that happen?
I was playing with Chris Stills, and it was the Horde tour again,
Oh,
actually.
okay.
Um, and he was playing the big stage. We were playing the smaller stage, and we were doing an encore. I think we were playing Ohio, and he happened to be walking across a long ways away, and he said, "I heard a guitar tone that I had to stop myself and go see who was doing that." And so he came and introduced himself. That's how that started. And I was either already started or about to start my first solo record. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and so I hit him up, see if he wanted to play. And that's how it went from there.
Man, how long did you work with him?
We toured together through 3 years, I guess. Right after that Diamonds on the Inside record
Mm-hmm.
came out. So I did that whole tour. And then we did There Will Be a Light together with the Blind
Was
Boys.
of Alabama, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, so it was probably 3 years total.
Okay. Yeah. That's another artist that I mean, I'm a child of the 90s, man. Like I grew up listening to his music, and like my wife bought me a Weisenborn for our as a wedding gift. Like, and he talk about a guy that's perfectly normal. I would expect him to say, I heard a guitar tone. He seems like he's like a tone nut.
Yeah.
Is that accurate? Like he seems like he's very into like his guitar tone, and I mean, no, he has those
Oh, yeah,
dumbles. So
for sure. Yeah. I mean, he grew up in a music store.
yeah, true.
He knows tone. I mean,
Yeah,
he's got a long old folk history in his family, and he came up with the proper tones around him.
yeah. I love his music, man.
I
One of
mean,
the
the tone and stuff like that is the thing about once you know, and you got no excuse after that. Yeah.
I know. Although, man, I will tell you, and I'll be
It's
the first.
never, it's never, it's never without a fight. There's always elements trying to force you to have bad tone.
Right. Yeah, there's always those demons, but I feel like it's also too, man, it gets so wrapped up in the game of like, how many overdrive pedals do I need? I don't need this many overdrive pedals, man. I don't even need this big of a pedal board. What am I doing?
Well, the older I get, the more I want to. I mean, unless there's something I've got to do. If I'm showing up somewhere, I usually just bring a guitar and a chord and just crank the amp and make it work with this thing in my hand.
Right. How many volume pots have you gone through from riding that pot?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the way it used to be done. A lot of, like, I was listening to Roy Buchanan for quite a bit during the pandemic, and reminded me, it's like, yeah, you just dime the amp and get it with the guitar.
Yeah, totally. That's awesome. Let me ask you, I'm curious, and this is so Fuzz Machine always comes up when people talk about you. And because of those tones on that record and everything. You know what I found interesting, and I mean this in the best way, but like there's tunes in there where I hear what's coming out of you almost sounds Kurt Cobain-esque. Like it has like this this visceral kind of like what's the track? It's so Bolero comes to mind. That tune is so visceral, and there's just like this vibe about it. When you were writing the tunes for that record, I mean, it's called Fuzz Machine, but were you like super inspired by like just dirty tones and like almost like, I don't know, like left of center of what people might expect to come out of you next in a way?
I don't. It wasn't a conscious decision, and it's just. I mean, any of my records, it's just where I'm at the time.
Right. Like what were
And
you listening to when you were making that record? I'm curious about that.
I couldn't really tell you. I don't remember. It was just a long time ago.
Yeah. That's the black hole of COVID too. That came out in 2020, right?
No, Fuzz Machine?
When did
No,
that come out?
that was
Why did I think? Oh, you know what? I bet you it's freaking
07?
iTunes. It's probably making.
07 or 08?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it came out online. It was a record that was uh, done and made, and I would sell it on tour, but it didn't actually go on to the platform
Streaming until then. Yeah, yeah.
until recently.
Yeah, they have it listed like that. I was like, why did they? Okay. So regardless, when you were doing that record, first of all,
Because my son was only, Elijah was only uh, 19 when
mm,
we made that record. And we went on tour. Here's the deal. I made Weary and Wired.
mm-hmm.
The band that I had with me to tour Weary and Wired was that band. And I had written those songs on that tour. And at the end of that tour, I just said, hey guys, give me 2 more days when we get home. We've been out all year. So just give me 2 more days and let's record these songs the way we've been playing them.
Oh.
And so we came home, and Elijah had been on that tour, and he was only 19. He's 33, 34 now.
Dang.
So it was a good while ago.
So that's pretty cool.
Well, I was younger and more pissed off.
To
answer your question.
That's where the Cobain comes from. You know what's cool about that is you can hear it in the record. If that, I didn't know that was the case, that you came right off the road, because the band sounds tight as hell. Hey.
Yeah, like I said, I would write a song and I'd show it to him, and then we'd work them up at Soundcheck. We worked those up on that tour, and so we recorded all 10 of those songs in 2 days.
Oh my god, dude. Was that a fuzz face? Was that just like a Dunlop fuzz face? Or what were you using on that record?
No. That was actually a lot more tone bender, that record.
Okay. Yeah, it's more gnarly. It's got like a harsher edge to some of those tones on that record, so that would make sense to me. That's cool, man. Like I didn't realize that, because that totally speaks volumes to why that record sounds the way it does, because you guys have just been rocking the hell out of that stuff.
Yeah, I knew that the band wasn't going to sound any better ever than it was at the time, and I also knew that I had a feeling we weren't going to be a band for how much longer. And
yeah.
So I just said, look, guys, let's just get this right now. And so, yeah, it was all captured on that record. I like that record a lot.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's when people talk about you, it's like synonymous with like one of the guitar records that everybody should listen to. At least in my community of people. Maybe you don't know that, but people talk about it quite a bit.
Cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of, and even the way that you play on that record, man, there's just a lot of really beautiful guitar moments on that record.
Thank you.
And like singing wise too, like the way that you approach, and even like that live record that you did, like live, was it Live from Germany? Is that what the record? Off the top? Even the way that you approach playing in that context of being like lead vocalist, guitarist, and not stepping on one thing, stepping on the other, you know, that comes across as like Fuzz Machine almost has that live energy, that I think that's why people resonate with it.
Well, it was us set up and playing just like we had been playing all year. In fact, I make most of my records like that.
Lots of bleed, like no worries about the bleed. Okay.
Well, no, definitely that Fuzz Machine was we're all in one room, and I always had 2 or 3 amps going at the same time. And so it was a blend of several, and the whole room was just buzzing. So
yeah, man,
it was a very live situation.
Yeah, it definitely comes off that way, dude.
Yeah, I'll always record that way, whether or not it's baffled or anything, or in separate ISO rooms, and we'll always track as live as possible and try to get everything done,
Yeah.
one take. So
Do you belabor over each individual track's tone? You're just like, I'm just plugged in. I got it dialed. I'm ready to roll. Like, let's do it.
I'll change it if it's not working.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
unless I have a specific thing that I really, I have a good idea what I want it to sound like, but if sometimes, something I learned producing is that you can't dictate what the music's going to sound like. You kind of have to just hoard it. I mean, and sort of herd it into where it wants to be. It's going to come the way it's going to come, and you just facilitate it the best that you can. Because otherwise you just pull your hair out trying to chase down this thing that you must have.
Right. Yeah. So as a producer, you're kind of like fostering good performances, obviously, and let's just get
Yeah,
great performances. And okay.
right. And as long
Yeah.
as the tones aren't bad, if it's not sticking out as bad, I won't worry about it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there are levels of good, but if it's working, it's working. I don't get too precious about stuff.
Right. Now, when you're producing on these records too, like, are you also doing a little playing sometimes with some of
Yeah,
these artists? That's cool.
yeah, but I can't do both at the same time very well. One's gonna lack a little bit. Like that's why I don't really like producing my own records anymore. It's I can't do both very well.
You
Uh,
too close to the music, maybe, or what do
well,
you
my
think it
job
is?
as a guitar player is different than my job as a producer. So to be the best guitar player, singer, performer in a band, I can't be producing at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm obviously hearing everything that's going on, and when things aren't working, I'll speak up. But I don't have, producer to me is that trusted perspective from the outside looking in, and looking around, seeing everything is working, looking behind you,
Mm-hmm.
so that you're not having to, and I can focus on the job at hand.
Right.
So producing wise, I tend to not want to be the only guitar player. I'll do overdubs, or I'll sit in on a thing or two, but I can't oversee the thing too well when I'm actually performing during it.
Yeah. Who do you trust to produce your music?
Um, I have to like what they do. It's like this last record that I have finished and looking for a label. I had my son produce it basically. I said,
Oh,
look,
tight.
these guys are coming, and we got a studio time kind of given to us, and it was there in Austin. So I said, look, you be my eyes and ears on the other side of the glass for this, and just tell me what you're hearing. He knows better than anybody else when I'm bullshitting, when I'm not. So
That's a good person to have on your team. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
So okay, so then you got that record coming up. So we'll have to keep our eyes peeled for when that's going to be hitting the scene.
yeah.
Um,
I've got some labels really enjoying it, but nothing's really moving quite yet. So it's a bit early to be talking about it. It's been done for a while, and
mhm.
I'm not performing any of the songs because when it finally does come out, I don't want it to be an old
Stale.
record to me.
Right.
So right now I'm just getting back out there to be out there again and start
Yeah.
working. So
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you are, man. So then you're gonna do some more West Coast stuff, and then do you think you'll come back out east once the new record pops? Do you think you'll
oh
try to
yeah,
make it back
yeah,
out?
yeah, for sure. I mean, I
Okay.
may be out there before that. I know that there's plans to do a run down south, and there's there's a couple of Midwest dates, and um, there's some on the West Coast. It's spotty, but it's I'm just starting to get out there again. And
Mm-hmm.
when there's a real reason to stay out there, then yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. Good, man. I'm glad you're doing it. All right, cool. So, Mark, I do this thing called the lightning round get down where I ask 10 rapid fire questions. They're just silly questions. And what
All
you
right.
could do is you can explain your answers if you want, or you can just burn through them. Either way. I'm going to
All
put
right.
on a metronome at 112 BPM for some suspense here. And then, so like I said, you don't have to explain your answers, but if you'd like to, I love hearing explanations. Just 10 quick questions. Are you ready?
We'll see.
All right. Albert or Freddie King?
Oh man, Albert.
Okay. Lasagna or ravioli?
Lasagna.
Les Paul with P90s or humbuckers?
Oof. P90s. I think a little more.
Temple of Doom or Last Crusade?
I know none of which is.
Indiana Jones, Temple of Doom or Last Crusade?
I don't know the difference.
Oh man, you haven't seen either of those movies?
Yeah, but so long ago, and
All right. How about this one? If you could time travel or space travel, which would you prefer?
Time.
Wheel of Fortune or Jeopardy?
The wheel's got a lot of cool colors.
Super reverb or twin reverb?
Super reverb.
Okay. Tell me, so between those two amps, everybody always tends to lean towards supers. What do you think it is about that amp that's so special?
Well, I mean, unless you're getting a really, really clean sound, twins are just impossibly loud, and you can't turn them up anywhere to get the sound. I mean, I can't. I don't really use an amp that's not sitting somewhere about 7 at least.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Is a super, if you got it on 7, is it starting to break up around then?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
I've never played through one loud enough to like kind of experience it in the room. So I didn't.
Well, it's half the power too, so it's just not ungodly loud to get it to where it'll start speaking to me.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I tend to make things too much on the amp and then pull back on the guitar.
Okay. Huh. Okay. All right. The band.
Somewhere to go to, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, totally, dude. The band or the Grateful Dead?
I think the band I have more history with. The Grateful Dead are fantastic, but I've put more time into the band.
Okay. Fair enough. And then we got reincarnation as a cat or a dog. Come back as a cat or a dog.
Dog.
And here's the last one, Mark. So if you could take one record, does not have to be your favorite record of all time, but if you could take one record and erase it from your memory, just so you could go back and experience it for the first time again. So what album would that be?
Man,
I know it's a tough one.
That's a lot. I mean, I'd have to say, Are You Experienced?
Okay.
That record tends to have that ability all by itself. If you don't listen to it for a while and you listen to it again, it's still just so like, what?
I know all the songs here. There it is right there.
Right.
It's right behind me. Yeah, that record, it's crazy. Because when you talk about earlier, you're talking about songwriting, like everybody thinks like when we talk about Jimmy, yes, the guitar playing, amazing. But like the amount of songs, great songs that came from that man and that record in particular.
Yeah.
It's like,
well, no one had ever heard anything like that at the time, and still to this day, no one's touched it. It's otherworldly. It was so far out,
Yeah. It's is that your favorite Hendrix? Yeah. Is that your favorite Hendrix record? Like that era?
I mean, I like all of it. I mean, we're only talking about a handful of years. But yeah, I think that there's something to that record that is just, it's literally like it came from another world. It broke so many of the rules that I thought there had to be listening to that. It's like that's that's really what it's inspiring to me. You know, it's just you don't really know what's happening half the time.
Yeah. Because are you more of a band of gypsies or an experienced guy?
Experience, I think, just for
Yeah.
that reason. I mean, I love the soulfulness and the gut bucket and the, there's a deep the soul quality of Band of Gypsies was hip, and I really have had periods where I just loved it. I always love it, but I just something keeps pulling me back to that.
Yeah, man.
The
Yeah.
balls that he had when he in '66 and just like he just tore everything down.
Yeah. That's crazy, man. That's so crazy. Well, anything else to promote? Anything else to let the people know about?
Not that I can
Pop
think
your.
of.
So BV's been moderating the chat, popping your links up here, so everybody needs to go buy records and anything that Mark's has on his websites. Go check that stuff out. Keep an eye on the tour and all of that.
Yeah, the only thing really new that it's kind of up and it's on Bandcamp is the Neil Young songs that Phil and I recorded. We now have a 12-inch 45 of the 6 songs.
Nice.
That is pretty cool. And I think it's Marc Ford and Phil Jones at Bandcamp or something
Nice.
Something like that. But if I'm kind of in a transition period, so if you can't find things online right now, they'll be up and going soon, I think. So.
And there's quite the catalog in terms of like streaming and stuff that people can find as well too.
6 or 7 solo records and lots of other music out there to listen to.
Yeah, man. Well, Mark, dude, thank you so much for making time, especially the day after you got back from freaking tour, dude. So I appreciate you. But everybody else, take care of yourself. Take care of each other. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you, man.